Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Alexander, president of the Mellon Foundation, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to our event, Civic Engagement and the Determined Hope of the Humanities. I'd like to begin by inviting all of you to say hello and who you are in the chat, which is already happening, and it's great to see the scroll zooming along. We'd like to know where you're watching from and if you have any questions for our speakers this afternoon. As always, we love to see lots of audience engagement in the chat throughout the program and the greater exchange and conversation that the chat supports. Today, I'm so pleased to be convening a discussion on the power of the humanities, the skills, insights, and rigorous inquiry these vital disciplines provide. We believe that the humanities, and by that we mean the study of what it is to be human, right? So language, culture, history, philosophy, arts, and the critical thinking and understanding that come from those disciplines and that help us understand what it is to be human. We believe that the humanities continue to fuel determination and hope across the country, driving civic engagement both locally and nationally. So we're thinking about the humanities as we might encounter them in a classroom or as we might encounter them in public or otherwise in community. We believe the humanities are making change not only in our neighborhoods, but in our broader multivocal society. As we hold this conversation just 1 year out from the 2024 presidential election, and with so much that is fraught, what can the humanities teach us about civic engagement and the sometimes turbulent American and global political process? How can the humanities help us stay engaged with each other and stay connected to the values of American democracy? Joining us today for a discussion, on civic engagement and the determined hope of the humanities are our two guest speakers, Carol Anderson and Juan Felipe Herrera. Carol Anderson is, hello, friends. It's so good to see you. Carol Anderson is a nationally recognized historian, thought leader, and professor of African American Studies at Emory University, whose work explores the intersection of race and public policy in the United States, and so much more. Among her many celebrated and award-winning books, she is the author of One Person, No Vote: How Voter Suppression is Destroying Our Democracy. She is a contributor to the op-ed pages of publications including the New York Times and the Washington Post, and is a regularly featured voice in documentaries and talk shows, and is a member of the Society of American Historians, the American Philosophical Society, and the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. Professor Carol Anderson. Juan Felipe Herrera is a visionary poet, performer, professor, visual artist, and community builder. He is currently writing a poetry collection on the war in Ukraine entitled Handful of Gravel, and is the author of more than 30 books of prose, poetry, and children's literature. In 2021, his poem Sunriders took actual flight from planet Earth in the interplanetary spacecraft NASA Lucy. How cool is that? A recipient of the Frost Medal and a Guggenheim Fellowship, among many other honors, he is a Chancellor of the Academy of American Poets, a former Poet Laureate of the state of California, and the 21st Poet Laureate of the United States. Juan Felipe Herrera, it's so nice to see you.
Great to see you. Thank you.
And so, Carol and Juan, we welcome you and we thank you for joining us. And let's get to the conversation. First, a big broad question. Based on your own work and experience as thinkers, scholars, creators, activists, and people who have also devoted yourselves to making your work public, to offering your work in a broad way, what do you believe the humanities can teach us about civic engagement? Why don't we start with Juan Felipe?
Okay. Well, historical consciousness is a very big thing and the most important way to see our realities, our social realities, without a sense of our histories and the herstories and the histories of our peoples, all peoples, then it's going to be difficult to engage in society. It's going to be odd. We're not going to know who we're really talking to, or how we are related, or what the conflicts have been, the struggles, the survival, the journey to the present, from our ancestors to the present. So historical consciousness is most key. And then there's also dialogue. If we do not dialogue with each other and we just stay separate as separate groups, as we are presented most of the time, and we find our way to each other, that's also very important. And giving all the falsities and made up mythologies, what's taking place or what's important or what's real, what we're talking about today is going to kind of resolve that. We want to talk about what is real and what is our history and herstory, and how we relate to each other and how we can work together, because we're talking about engagement. So we have to battle or respond to expressively in as many modes as possible to what is real, our realities, our social, cultural, historical realities, our gender realities. All those things allow us to, all that knowledge, all that perception, all that consciousness allows us to step into society and step into being part of what's going on and bringing people in and bringing ourselves in all at the same time. So our poetry, our art, our voice, our writing, ourselves, our families, the families of all beings, can blossom. And that's what it's all about.
And why do you think, just to go further with that, why do you think the humanities in particular have those, I'll call them superpowers?
Those are good superpowers. The
Yeah.
humanities, anthropology, sociology, literature, ethnic studies, women's studies, gender studies, on and on, music and dance, all those beautiful things um, allow us to express ourselves. Remember, without expressing ourselves, we don't have a voice. And without knowing who we are, and without discussing that, analyzing that, writing that, and exchanging our thoughts and building our thinking and our knowledge about each other, about the world, how on earth are we going to change in a positive manner? If we don't know about Martin Luther King, if we don't know about Dolores Huerta, if we don't know about our ancestors here in the Americas, we're going to be lacking, and we're going to be partial, and we're going to be easily taken by the kind of political hypnosis that takes place these days. But what is right, what is true, which it isn't because it's fake. We're having a hard time right now, and we're being presented with fake mythologies of who we are, and that is not true. So the humanities, then, we can grasp them, and of course we're going to analyze them, and of course we're going to discuss them, and we're going to critique them, and we're going to exchange. But most of all, we're going to have dialogue. That is so important, and thinking, that is so important, and voicing and expressing, and maybe writing poetry about it, and painting a mural about it, putting it in the community, a beautiful mural in the community about the histories of all our peoples. How great is that? As opposed to accepting a stale, hypnotic, falsified scenes of who we are, which are not true.
Thank you. Carol, how would you answer that question?
I would answer that in terms of what the humanities really do is they allow us to understand that in so many ways we've been here before. And we have had really strong, incredible, visionary folk who have figured out how to take on a Leviathan and really bring the humanity out in people. That is what is so powerful about knowing what the humanities can do. So it is seeing the way music inspired folk It is seeing the way that art inspired people to build together, to think together, to dream together, to imagine together. It is seeing the way that political organizing has allowed folks to figure out where are the weaknesses in the Leviathan, and where we as a people can amass our strength, our power to take on the thing that is oppressing us. And so that is what is the beauty of humanities. And it also allows us to see our joy, not just the suffering, but the joy, to see how people live into their humanity, even in the darkest of times, where they pull on for their strength in order to get through, in order to not just survive, but to thrive. That is the power of the humanities.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that you've turned us back to those examples. And I often think about Frederick Douglass and the power of the word and the power of the book, right? So as we know, with Frederick Douglass, he was a remarkable orator and he used those humanities skills very well. But the people he was working with to try to end slavery said, Frederick, you can't be everywhere at once. Let's write it in a book. And then we have a book, I mean, simplifying it, but it's an elegant story that literally helped to end slavery. So what are some other examples of, the way that humanities power has moved into civic space to make something happen?
Well, it's a I don't know, it's a collection of so many voices, so many peoples, like you said, Frederick Douglass, so many peoples like him, that had to sacrifice quite a bit to just pick up that book and then open it up and then be inspired and then write and then speak and then stand up and then face the people and face those that didn't want him to speak. So the humanities comprise all those forces by many peoples, and the study of those materials and that dialogue I had mentioned earlier. So the humanities are a compression or an expansion of many years and decades and more of those studies and those trials and thoughts and questions. So it's a beautiful ocean. It's a beautiful ocean of discovery, of sacrifice, of thinking, of knowledge, of ancestral wisdom, of present response to all that, and of organization and of organizing. And it just keeps on going. I mean, you can't stop a poem. You can't stop a mural. You can't stop a song. You can't stop a dance. Mm-hmm. So the humanities are like that, ever evolving, ever blossoming, ever sharing, and ever being responded to, and ever continuing. And it's like us. However, we are mortal, and the humanities keep on rolling. So it's an incredible space of life, a life that's flourishing, a life that is not buried, a life that's available like a garden is available to each one of us. When you go to that garden, each flower is a voice, each flower is a study, an examination, knowledge, and it's freedom of thought also. There's too much going around in these days of being banned, books being banned, voices being banned, authors being banned. And what we want, and through the humanities, as we add to the humanity, is freedom of thought. And it continues. We want to be free in all aspects, and the humanities provide that. If we study them, and if we rethink them, and if we participate and have those dialogues, that writing, and that commitment.
Mm-hmm, so I'm teaching the civil rights movement this semester as one of my classes, and my students are working on research papers. Some of those papers are dealing with the power of music in mobilizing and organizing the movement, freedom songs, those freedom dreams coming through in the music, where they took those gospel songs, traditional gospel songs, and then added freedom lyrics to it. no, Jim Crow can't turn me around. Not going to let Jim Crow turn me around. You know, and some of my students are looking at the power of art and those visual images in building community in terms of tearing down those ethnic notions of who Black people were and who society said Black people were. And they said, no, this is who we are. And those power of those images in the newspapers, in the murals on the sides of buildings, in the flyers that were handed out, in terms of building community, in terms of raising a sense of consciousness about the community's own power, the community's own image, the community's own identity. My students are just engaged with the power of art, the power of art. And the power, when you think about the power of poetry, I think about Langston Hughes's Let America Be America. That thing is powerful in terms of the image of what America says it is, but America has never been America to me. But then he keeps going on, and he keeps talking about that kind of multiracial, everybody's feeling the brunt of this thing, but we can make America America. So you think about what that kind of poetry meant at the time and what it can mean being read today. I mean, that is the power of the humanities.
Mm-hmm. And you remember when that poem moved into the explicitly electoral political realm, when John Kerry read from it and made it a refrain in when he was running for president. So it can move in a lot of different ways. And so I would like to hear more, because you say, Juan Felipe, and I agree with you that you can't stop a poem, but right now people are stopping poems, right? So, as we know, books are being banned at a ever increasing and extraordinary rate. And what I think is very, very significant about the book banning is that it's happening at the same time that what I'll broadly call ethnic studies is being criminalized in so many states and cannot be taught. So these two things go together. And as we know, the experiences and bodies of knowledge that are the ones that are being banned are almost without exception people of color and LGBTQ people. So it's not just some books, it's some lives. And that's sort of where we are right now. So I wanted to kind of bring that forward, but also to hear more from both of you about what you are finding on the road. Carol, I'll call the road both your classroom, in encounter, and also because you write for huge audiences, when you encounter those publics, when you're speaking, when you're reaching people through film. What are you hearing now? What are you finding out there on these questions that we're discussing?
I find initially a sense of despair because it looks so bleak and so dark. But that's when I reach back and talk about how in the midst of the abyss, there are always folks who stand up and say, not on my watch. And it's knowing that history, that there are those voices that then bring others around them. So I think about E.D. Morel in Belgium, who noted that King Leopold was committing massive atrocities in the Congo. And so you have this shipping clerk who understands what is happening, that you have the king creating slavery in the Congo. And he's like, not on my watch. I cannot have this. And so he brings in other people. He goes to Britain and a movement begins to stop King Leopold from slaughtering the Congolese. That is the power of knowing this history. That is the power of knowing that having integrity, having a sense of vision, having a sense of morality, having a strong sense of right and wrong is absolutely essential, and it's bedrock foundational for the humanities. What we understand in the humanities is we look into the abyss, but then we see the incredible strength growing out of that darkness, growing out of that hellscape. And we see the people who envision what it could be and who are fighting for what it could be and how great it could be for everybody. And that is where that strength is. And so when I'm out there on the road, in the classroom, at film premieres, at giving talks, what I hear and see is initially a sense of despair. And then as I start talking and start bringing out these histories, these incredible histories, people are like, ooh, ooh, yeah. Yeah. And so it's almost like church call and response, right? And yeah, and that incredible strength that comes from knowing that history, knowing that people have looked at horrific atrocities, looked at oppression that seemed unbreakable, looked at power that seemed unstinting. And they looked up and they said, you don't know who I am. I am a child of democracy. I am a child of freedom. We're not having this, not on my watch. That strength is powerful. And when you know that power was there before, and that power managed to get us to this point, it's that power that we draw upon, that power, that organizing, that sense of community, that sense of what the humanities, what art and music and literature and history and poetry can bring. That's the strength. That's what I hear on the road.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. What are you finding on the road?
Well, you know, it's pretty much the same. You know, all these readings and performance that I do, and with writers and with children and with spoken word poets and poets that they want to come out of the woodwork, and poets here in Fresno and throughout California and throughout the United States. People are excited. People are excited. They come in the hundreds. They line up all across the building, and say, Juan Felipe, are you gonna talk about climate change? Okay, because we came all the way from Racine and you know, to Milwaukee, and are you gonna do about climate change? Okay, tell you what, I'll write you a song right now. Right now, I want to write you a song, and then we'll sing it. Okay, all right, let's do that. And then they come to the reading, and we do that little song. But they're very there's hunger, right? There's hunger and excitement, and just ready to take off, And we clap our hands, we do chants, and we sing out loud, and we read out loud, and I read the poem, and we read it together, and it's just a lovely moment of finally expressing ourselves collectively, unified, in harmony. And the voice is extremely big and extremely brilliant. And that's kind of a revelation of what we can do with our voices, with our experience, with just what we have inside, not what we have outside, but what we have inside, our inner self, who we really are, our voices that we've kind of had, you know, in a little bag somewhere, but all of a sudden we tear it open, and we're here collectively in a studio space or at a university or on a kiosco, like we did recently a couple of days ago here at Arte Americas on Fresno. And it's a little round, you know, that stage, round kiosco, and we got up there, and poets from Fresno got up there, and they were belting their poems out. I see a lot of need and desire and excitement and curiosity. You know, poetry. You know, what are they going to do? Poetry. Okay, let's go hear the poetry, and then we boom it out. The poets boom it out, and it's a beautiful, deep, very. It's a collective self that appears. We're no longer invisible, or we're no longer being invisibilized. We are expressing ourselves. Everyone's expressing themselves, and they're writing pieces. And they're reading pieces by Nezahualcóyotl, the Aztec prince of the 1400s in central Mexico. And they're reading poems on and on, whatever poems they want to read or that they write. And Dolores Huerta appears. She's in the audience. And I said, come on up, Dolores. And she said, well, I used to want to be a poet too, but I was told I couldn't write. I said, Dolores, as of right now, and then this is what I did in Bakersfield. I just remembered because she really wanted to be a poet in third grade. She really did. And she was feeling a bit sad when she was telling me that. And I said, well, I'm going to do something. We were in Bakersfield, and she was giving a scholarships to youth, Latino youth, farm worker family youth, so they could continue in school. And I said, ladies, I said, everybody, I said, people, I got something to tell you. And everybody opened their eyes. I said, well, I want to make an announcement. This is when I first was moving around as California Poet Laureate throughout the state. I said, by the powers vested in me as Poet Laureate of California, today I am announcing that Dolores Huerta is the Poet Laureate of Kings County.
Beautiful.
And that's what happened. And she was so happy. But,
Beautiful.
She continued and became an incredible community organizer and made a big impact worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
But it was
So
good
what
to
I
do
love
that.
about that too, and with that moment of sort of naming someone with certain gifts within a community and calling it poetry, getting to the essence of what it means to be a committed truth teller, helping a community move forward, in the way that she has for decades and decades and decades. I wonder, Carol, if we could talk about the academic humanities. And, what we're seeing across the academy now is, again, departments that, all of the hyphenated studies becoming unteachable in many places by law. Places where, languages and other things, humanities departments have been economically vulnerable for a very, very long time. For a very, very long time, but increasing now. There's been a suspicion of the humanities that is, well, what job do you get with that? So therefore, maybe that's not what young people or any people should be doing in school. So where are we now with higher education and what's happening with the humanities?
So I think what you're seeing is a really horrific convergence of two major strands, at least two major strands. One is the kind of vocational bent in education, that you only go to school in order to get a job, a particular job. And so you're going to be an engineer, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be in business. And so to think about the humanities, so it's like, well, what kind of job can you get with an English degree? And so you get that kind of heavy vocational bent. The other bent, so there's three strands. The other strand is the hatred of education, trying to dismantle public education by a massive defunding of public education. And so you see hundreds of millions of dollars pulled out of operating budgets from universities, state universities, by the state legislatures. And so when you begin to defund the university and you're requiring the university to continue to operate at a certain level without the funding they need in order to handle the number of students that are there, in order to have the faculty that you need, in order to have the resources, like the books in the library, the databases in the library, which all cost. When you're pulling that money away, then you're forcing the university to make decisions about where are the big bucks? How do I keep this enterprise afloat? And then I think that the third strand that is coming in there is throughout this conversation, we have been talking about the power of humanities in catalyzing people's imagination about what freedom could look like, about what democracy could look like, about what their full humanity could look like. And so when you have that kind of power that's in the humanities, where people can actually have freedom dreams and know it's okay to dream, And then you have the kind of vocational sense that you need to, education is only for a job. And then you have the disdain for public education, the disdain for higher education coming in from policymakers. Those three things, I believe, have combined to create this incredible crisis that we're in right now, where they feel very comfortable in saying, oh, who needs that ethnic study stuff? Oh, who needs that African American study stuff? Who needs that Latino study stuff? Who needs that stuff? It's a way to make invisible the people. It is a way to just erase their very being. And because this is a nation that is really comfortable with talking about makers and takers, so who made this nation? Who is worthy of this nation? Who built this nation? If you erase that history, then you come up with a very flattened narrative that means that there are only certain people who are deserving of the Bill of Rights, deserving of the right to vote, deserving of good housing, deserving of access to quality healthcare, deserving of a quality education, quality K through 12. And so it limits who's deserving when you're able to make invisible the histories and the contributions of wide swaths of people. So that's what we're up against. But again, when people understand how they're being marginalized, how they're being eviscerated, they fight back. So you're seeing mobilization happening where with these banned books. So you're seeing groups, students developing banned book clubs so that they could read the banned books because they know there's something in those books that I'm not supposed to read, but that I'm supposed to read. And so I'm going to read what I'm going to read. And you saw parents who weren't part of that vocal piece, who were shutting down books and shutting down curricula, who were like, wait a minute, my baby has a right to be able to learn. My baby needs to know about the incredible diversity of this nation, the incredible diversity of this world, needs to know who these folks are, needs to know how to navigate in this space. And why are you sitting up here trying to deny my baby that ability to have the knowledge to be able to do that? And so, as in our histories, what we're seeing is people who are feeling the oppression, the evisceration, the need to make them invisible. They're fighting back. This is what led Carter G. Woodson to found African American history, because he saw in the nadir, when you're having the rise of Jim Crow and the massive lynching that is happening, this kind of sense where, the African descendant never brought anything to this nation. They never built anything. They never had a culture. They never did anything. They had to, they needed the benevolent hand of slavery. And without the benevolent hand of slavery, they have gone wild. So that was the narrative that was being told. And Carter G. Woodson said, not today, Satan, not today. And then just started doing that heavy, heavy lifting of African American history, telling that tale with all of the power and all of the rigor that it deserved.
Well said. That's well said.
Well, and what would let's talk about in the where we encounter the humanities, starting with you, Juan Felipe. Well, what's an example of public humanities not in school, humanities out in public somewhere where that you think is being done very, very richly, very powerfully, very effectively?
That's a good question. I don't know if we call them humanities, but you're right. They are public humanities. I think it goes back, as we were saying earlier, to the poets, to the dancers, to the singers, to those organizing their community, to the danzantes, Aztec danzantes, that form a circle in their own community, like in Watsonville or San Diego or almost every city. I don't know how that happened, but it became a very beautiful national, international movement with Mexico and Latin America and the United States. Kind of began in 1973 in San Francisco with the visits of some of the dance leaders, and that met up with the poets in San Francisco, like Entozaki Shange and Alejandro Murgia, Janice Murquitani, and another group. But the teachings began, and then everyone's, well, let me try it, let's dance. when I learned those dance steps and what they mean, and the drum, and honoring the sun and the earth, and on. The public humanities, once again, it's how we come out in Chicano Park. The police or the highway patrol was going to, and this is in Logan Heights barrio in San Diego, California. I was in that barrio I grew up in that barrio, Logan Heights. And it was going to be a patrol station being built in the middle of the barrio. And some of the youth were walking by and noticed the police or the architects or whoever it was beginning to make a plan on that small plot of land. And everybody got together and said, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. As a matter of fact, look at the pillars, because this was taking place underneath the bridge that goes across San Diego to Coronado and on. And we look at those pillars, those giant cement pillars. They're perfect for a mural. Perfect. And we can paint, and we can draw, and we can present who we are. And that's what took place. And now that whole place is a kind of a historical site, but it took all these years. So the public humanities kind of been generated as they would by our own communities, whether it's dancing or painting or just getting up there and reading that poem that you have, or tapping and reading at the same time. I forgot Maurice Chestnut, tap dancer. I met him in Newark, and he says, right, yeah. I said, what are you doing? Well, we're going to do this together. I said, we are? Well, I'll be. Well, let's do it together. So, right, he did it. He put down his little wooden block on the floor, and he started tap dancing, and I was on the mic. He started engaging. So it's kind of, it's community-born humanities. It's humanity-born humanities. It doesn't necessarily come from a kind of traditional institution, but our own community institutions. There's a lot of centros culturales that kind of grew during late 60s, early 70s. And they have changed, of course, but they left a great legacy and a lot of artists already starting up. And so it's been very powerful throughout the Southwest. I don't know if it moved all the way east. Of course, the East Coast had Puerto Riqueño and the great poets of New York, Latino poets like Victor Hernandez Cruz, and I forgot Tato Laviera, Miguel Algarín, who passed away, and great writers. And they just came out. They just came on out, and they were influenced by various things, the movement, politics, the removal of power, and we have to just carve that power back in. So that's been most of my life, is working in communities and schools, as you know, and right there in Chicano Park. I did so much in Chicano Park. I even portrayed the Easter Bunny one time, as well as poetry. And then remember the teatro movement. Remember the street theater movement.
Yeah.
Right. That's a beautiful flower of community humanities. But it was hundreds of theaters, hundreds of teatros, self-taught, self-made, and all the issues that we were facing, right? All the issues that we were facing in the community: police brutality, schooling, affirmative action, non-affirmative action, anti-affirmative action, Vietnam. And since those years, since the mid-'60s to the present, those teatros, those street theaters, community theaters, have been in so much beautiful work as the spoken word artists and poetas and danzantes. And all that has been incredibly influential. The danzantes brought us the values of the danza and what the danza means and its Aztec roots, all the way from Mexico City and other areas. Of course, there's also the mercado teatros, the political theaters that came out of incredible, large, giant mercados, marketplaces, and how they were being treated. The workers, how they were being treated. So they created a theater, Teatro Ambulante, I think de Puebla. and they were like a moving theater, and they talked about their reality as sellers of chile and corn and tortillas, but how life was in that sphere. And where do we get that information? Where do we get those stories? So we were getting them from that particular theater, and of course, it was women's theater and women's collectives, and all the way to Seattle and beyond, the Spider Women's Theater and Berkeley. So I kind of meandered and traveled in those theatros and in those spoken word boxes or crates. I even stood on crates in San Francisco. I said, everybody says you can stand up on a crate and speak, so I think I'm going to stand up on a crate and do some poetry, see how it feels. So all that is available, was available, has been available, and then the weaving of all of us, not just brown or black or Asian, but just keep on weaving. And right now, I think it's at a beautiful cross section. But those are the key groups
let me pause us just for a minute, because I want to turn. We have so many questions from the audience, and so I want to get us to a couple of those. I'm going to put two together that are in the same zone, and this is from Michael Chambers at Boston University Center for Anti-Racist Research. The question is, given the current political climate and recent setbacks, Roe v. Wade, affirmative action, so forth, how can the humanities drive our nation toward enlightenment and progress? And then I want to put that along with Candace Lillyquist from the National Education Association, who asks, how do we return to a shared agreement on facts? We can have different opinions, but if 408 people ran a race, there's no debate about the number of people who ran the race. So, really getting us, maybe Carol, you could dive in, to the political climate now, the current divisions, and the role of facts.
Okay. So, shameless plug here. This is exactly what I tried to do with One Person, No Vote, was to because we had this narrative about massive rampant voter fraud and the need to protect our elections from all of these people in the city who are out here trying to steal honest, hardworking democracy from good, honest, hardworking folk. And it was to break apart those narratives that were out there to see how they really function and to put the facts out there. So this is what voter ID really does. This is how it came to be. This is what it looks like. This is how it operates. This is how gerrymandering really works. This is what it is designed to do. This is what they say it's doing. This is what it is designed to do. And so part of the power of the humanities is it gives you a history in order to understand what it is that you're looking at. And it gives you the critical thinking skills to be able to pull apart narratives to understand what is fiction and what is fact. And you keep arguing on the facts. And there are some folks who are absolutely, let's be true, immune to fact. You can't get to them. But there are so many other people who just want to know, how did we get here? What is this? And so how we get out of this is we have to organize, and we must vote. We must fight for this democracy. We must fight for this democracy that we have the vision of what it could be. So again, I go to Langston Hughes. America was never America to me, but my God, one day it will be. And that's how we deal with the issues of fiction masquerading as fact, and how we trying to deal with evidence. And we keep coming back to the evidence, and we keep citing the evidence, making it really clear. We're not making this up. Feel like TLC. This is how it works. This is how it works. So seeing how it works, and in their own words, and being really careful about the documentation of what they said, when they said it, how they said it, why they said it, and what it was designed to do. And so it is about making people believe that democracy is not worth it, or that your vote is not worth it. how we're able to deal with issues of book bans is we need to have people in power who really believe in the power of the First Amendment, who really believe in the power of democracy. That's what we need to have.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yes.
Here's a
I
question
remember.
from Michael Feldman.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, please. No, go
Well,
ahead.
we're just gonna. It made me. This question made me think of Mrs. Sampson, Mrs. Lelia Sampson. I always talk about her, my third grade teacher in Logan Heights and Army barracks, which were our classrooms. And she played a lot of gospel with a giant phonograph in class in third grade. I had never said anything in class. It was, I was speaking Spanish most of the time, and I got punished for that early on. So when I was in Miss Sampson's class, she goes, "I want you to come up to the front." Well, that's the last thing I'm going to do, I said to myself. And I went up to the front. She goes, "Okay, can you turn around and look at the class?" I go, "Okay, but that's the last thing I'm going to do." But I did it. She goes, "I'm right next to you." All right, all right. Now sing a song. Oh my, you got to be kidding. Okay. So I sang a song, the great song, the operatic song called Three Blind Mice. So so I sang that song, and she turned around to me and she said, she said, "Juan, you have a beautiful voice." And I had it, I wasn't, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what, I didn't want to accept it. I had never heard of that, never heard that phrase before, either the word voice or the word beautiful. And she said it. And by the end of the year, she had me singing a solo to Swing Low, Sweet Chariot in front of the whole assembly, the whole school. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying that because what has to happen, one of the things that has to happen is to stand up. Is to stand up.
Yes.
Right? We got to stand up and face the reality that is there's an issue with. There's a problem. There's opposition. There's lies flying right through everything, and falsities. All that is going on, and we're being pushed around by all that. We're being pressed against the wall. Our freedom, our sense of freedom is being eroded. Our values are being torn apart in some way. We don't want to do that, but it begins to happen. So we got to stand up. Just like just like Mrs. Sampson said, "Can you please come up to the front?" All right. And stand up. Okay. Now present yourself. Present yourself. Yeah. Okay. And I think that's part of what Carol says. It's connected to what Carol says. We got to stand up. We got to write that poem, whatever you're feeling, whatever you believe in, whatever you really want to be said, whatever you think was wrong, what do you think was put you down, or your peoples got pushed aside or segregated once again or lied about. Well, it's time to write. It's time for you to speak up. Stand on that corner, whether it's by yourself or put a group together, get a string bass, some congas, and a saxophone, and go big. If you want to go big, but you can just stand up and sing, or just stand up and say it. Stand up and say it. And don't wait till you organize 1,000 people. You probably can, but let's start. Stand up and say it. So I think that it comes from you. It comes from us, from our deep down inner voice, which is our true voice. Let's get that true voice out. Let's be true persons. I went down to Mexico, 1970. I wanted to connect with my ancestors. Everybody was talking about identity. I said, well, I like talking about it, but we got to meet each other. We can't just talk about Aztecs and Mayas. Let's get on down to the earth and meet the peoples and sit down and share whatever we're going to share. So I got so excited about this story that I'm losing my point of view here. And that was very, very effective. That made a lot. That just put it together for me. Meeting the Lacandon Mayas, and sitting down in a hut, made by hand. And they said, "Look, Juan," I took a group of my friends at UCLA, and we all went. And I said, and he said, "Juan, our forest is gone. has been chopped down by the lumber company. And our animals have been just taken, killed, and most, we have maybe 3 left. And the women have been raped. And just straight out, that's what one of the leaders of that particular village said. So when I went there, okay, identity, what's my identity? I want to know, I want to meet my ancestors. Well, that's okay, that was good. But they wanted to talk about what had really happened and their history.
Mm-hmm.
So then I came back, and I said, I gotta get this together. And this stuff, sometimes the things we don't want to talk about things because they're painful, and people have suffered. We have suffered. Our communities are suffering. So we just got to stand up and speak it and write it. If you want to get into poetry, mighty fine. Stand up, because you do have a beautiful voice. You really do. You don't think we do. So many years being told we shouldn't speak. So many years told we have accent. So many years we've been told not to speak in Spanish. And all of a sudden, we got to rip that away and stand up and speak and sing and write that poem and blow that poem and give it away to the people. And we'll make a connection, and people are going to listen. And that's good. That's good right there. And that's a value, because you have to value yourself. You have to value others to do that. Mm-hmm.
Well, here's a question that takes that into the very, very brass tacks from Michael Feldman. How do we link humanities to specific, actionable, practical, and nonpartisan action steps for individuals and groups to take on critical issues for the U.S. and globally? So that's a big question, but Carol, can you drive a lane in that question?
Yes. So how do we take it on is we, again, I go back to the history. You understand the history of how we got here, because I mean, this didn't happen like Athena just popping right out of Zeus's head. Humanities, right? This happened because there were a series of decisions that were made and decisions not made by a series of folk, understanding what those forces were, what was driving them, how did we get here? Knowing that history means that you don't get seduced by the false narratives. It means that it allows you to have a common shared understanding of the forces that put us in this place in the first place, which means that once you know how you got here, you got a much stronger sense of how you get out. And that's how we do this work, knowing this history. And there are some incredible histories that are being written, or that have been written, that are out there, that help lay this thing out clearly and accessibly, with strong scholarship, strong academic rigor. So you can follow the sources, you can find it for yourself too. And so the historian in me is like, it is through this kind of work of understanding the forces that brought us to this point. So we can have this common shared history, this common shared language, this common shared knowledge base that gives us the ability to. So when knowledge becomes partisan, and that's where we are right now, knowledge has become partisan, and it's not. It's not. Either he did it or he didn't do it. Either he said it or he didn't say it. Either he meant it or he didn't mean it. Sometimes it's just that simple. So we have to understand sometimes it really is just that simple. And so we have to look at those facts and then move our way through.
Well, there's another question for you, Carol, that follows up with some of what you've been talking about, from someone called Ross, who says, how do you square the idea of the humanities as a uniter with your idea of the humanities as a weapon against oppression? Might there not be a role for the humanities to bridge the gap between the people and what you call the Leviathan?
And that will require that the Leviathan.
Thank you, Ross. I wanted to bring the Leviathan back. So thank you, Ross.
Yeah. That would require that the Leviathan is able to really tap into its own humanity. and is able to see the other's humanity. So part of the way that oppression works is you strip the other of their humanity. You strip them of being human beings. You strip them of being people. You strip them of having culture. You strip them of having ideas, of wants and of dreams, and you break them down in terms of, and we know the terms, in terms of being vermin, in terms of being takers, in terms of being just labor, just bodies to do the work. And so when you strip them that way, then the Leviathan can't get there. But there are moments where the Leviathan looks up and says, "Oh, Shaggy," and realizes that it's a new day. And that there's some stuff that the Leviathan has to know. And you find the Leviathan then going after that knowledge too. So when the Leviathan is being brought to bear, and it's usually the pressure that is coming in from the oppressed on the Leviathan that forces the Leviathan to know, to learn, to rethink, to say, okay, the way I've been doing business, I can't keep doing business like this. I just can't.
Yep.
And that's the power of the humanities.
So we are at time, and there's so much that we could keep talking about, and so much that is happening in the chat. So I see you all, we hear you all, and thank you for this avid participation. But to conclude, I'd like to ask each of you, first Juan Felipe and then Carol, to leave us with a phrase, a line of poetry, a saying, a word, something that you find gives you power and light that you want to share with everybody else. Juan Felipe, if you could start.
All right. The power is in you, and the answer is in you. And within that answer and that power, there is kindness. And that kindness is global and beyond, all the way to the stars and back. And that is a lot of power. That power you have, it's your inner voice, it's your true self, it's your open arms, it's your life. And that is a task. It is your life itself. And Alexa is jumping in over here. It's Siri. Siri, please.
You're like, hush, child.
She likes what you're saying. She wants. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Carol, what will you leave us with?
We have the power if we tap into it. And if we imagine democracy in its fullness, imagine democracy in terms of our freedom dreams, imagine democracy in terms of realizing our humanity. We have the power to do that, and we must do that.
Well, Juan Felipe and Carol, thank you so much for this hour of power. And it is reaching far and wide with all of your wisdom and all of the richness of your thinking and all of the generous openness of your hearts and minds. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, everybody who's listening and participating. We have these conversations regularly, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.